3, 2, 1, up! Ponder ignited the engines as Feldspar called out over the radio. Both ships hopped off the ground at the same time, or they must have. Otherwise, we'd have crashed already. The ship went up all right, but it started to tilt. Whoa, easy there! Feldspar held a finer handle on the controls and corrected their tandem trajectory. Just hover in place. I'll move us. The joined ships leveled off, but they were still headed up and away from the dark Bramble seed. The computer. That'll control things better than I can. Ponder told the computer to match velocity with the nearest celestial body, that being Timberhearth. It jolted sideways and made an error screech. What are you doing? Feldspar barked into the microphone. They frantically compensated with their side thrusters. The computer's confused, Ponder told them. Forget the computer. I trained you to fly. Now fly! The rookie pilot took a deep breath and watched the horizon line, trying not to throw him off balance. Ease off on the throttle and hover. I can do that. Ponder switched everything to manual, reduced thrust, and then just held everything steady. Feldspar made all the adjustments. Three-dimensional movement was so natural to them, even while jockeying with a set of engines with a mind of their own. The whole rig started to move as one. Pivot sideways, back both craft over the seed. They even fired their thrusters down, pushing to get them lower. Ponder didn't dare move the controls. The tree keepers and engineers made sure everything was latched in position, even while the evil plant continued to grow. The seed looked strange now, with several jagged stumps sticking out where Chuck had been. They're giving me thumbs up. Give me a boost. Easing up full throttle, starting in 3, 2, 1, now! Ponder resisted the urge to slam the throttle forward and push it up notch by notch. They started to go up, but yanked to a stop. They held in place, straining against the chains. Through the landing camera, they could see one stubborn root burrowed into the ground. It flexed as they pulled, but wouldn't break. Jardy came into view, chomping on the last anchor with her massive jaws. We'd be toast without her. Ponder lurched up as the seed broke free of the planet. The ball of wood, portals, and hatred swung like a pendulum at the end of the chains. They focused on steadying the ship. We got it! Feldspar ordered, keep going, full throttle till we clear atmosphere. Things went smoothly until they reached space. Their cargo was still dangerous. If they made a bad turn, or slowed down incorrectly, the big seed would swing around on top of them. It was the strangest flight of their life. 2 ships and 2 pilots had to coordinate their heading, all while carrying a load far heavier than they were made for. Frankly, it was amazing that Slate's last-minute hauling rig withstood the strain. They could have cut it loose there, with a heading away from Timberhearth. But no one knew how the seed got to the homeworld in the first place. It had crashed into the planet from space, but what set it on a course toward their planet? No, we gotta do this right. The experienced pilot guided them safely away from Timberhearth on their way to a destination the seed wouldn't come back from. Soon everything was going in the right direction. They cut thrusters and cruised peacefully through space. Never thought I'd be saving the world. Ponder thought they'd be terrified to mess things up. No way. This was exhilarating. I can feel nervous later. Feldspar's voice came over the radio. Down 7 degrees. There. Ponder squinted into the fiery light, now lined up in the middle of the front window. A warning indicator for a collision course popped up on their navigation computer. We're almost clear of the planetary orbits. We've got to make sure that thing goes right into the fire, like one of Gabbro's marshmallows. Got it, said Ponder. Let's end this. When I say the word, hit the switch to let out your winch cable. That'll unhook you from the rig. Ponder had learned that switch, but never had a situation to use it. They looked over the toggles to make sure it was where they remembered. Ponder clicked on the landing camera to make sure everything was fine. The rig was still attached properly, with the evil seed in tow. Is something moving down there? Twisting roots jutted out into empty space. One was coiled halfway around the hauling rig. That definitely wasn't there before. Feldspar? We better hurry up. The seed's growing. I'll speed us up. There was a vibration as Feldspar hit the thrusters on their ship, pushing the joined crafts faster. It was strange feeling the ship accelerate without firing the thruster, but they trusted the old pilot to set the best vector. They watched the indicator next to the sun. Made them nervous to watch the speed go up and the distance go down. Feldspar knew they were cutting it close. Once we let go, I want you to go up and over the sun. Do not try to reverse course. We're going too fast. Ponder stayed ready on the winch. All right, release in 3, 2, 1. Let 'em go. Feldspar gave the command. The winch whirred at the back of the ship, then quiet. Is anything happening? The timber braces of the cargo harness scraped on the hull one last time, falling away as designed. Well, look at that. No wiggling necessary. They pulled up slightly. It was easy. Just a ship, no baggage attached. A muffled, angry yell came over the comm. Feldspar, you okay? Ponder pivoted the craft to where they expected the other ship to be. Empty space. They faced the cargo harness and the seed. Feldspar's ship was still attached, but it wasn't Slate's fault. The thorny vine that wrapped around the rig was now curling around the front of their ship, as if maliciously preventing its escape. I'm alive, Feldspar grunted, but I'm trapped. We gotta get you out of there, Ponder exclaimed. But Feldspar got quiet. Calm, deliberate, certain. Ponder, I think I'm done for. You head back. I'm taking this thing with me. No way. I'm coming for you. Ponder gave the thrusters a tap to make sure their own ship would stay out of reach of the Bramble. Then they tore off the straps and raced to the exit. They flung themselves out of the hatch and jetted to the rescue. This is why pilots wear their suits when they fly. They found themselves headed into a horrible tangle. A second route was already sprouting toward the doomed ship. The one that had already grabbed hold was getting thicker and thornier, squeezing the ship. Can it crush the hull? Thankfully, the hatch was unobstructed. Ponder couldn't believe what they saw when they got inside. The twisting plant had dented in the hull on the side of the cockpit, and a long spike had punctured it. The huge thorn aimed right for the pilot. Am I too late? Ponder rushed to their side. The spike barely missed the Harthian, instead pushing the pilot seat forward and pinning them against the control surfaces. Thank Providence. Feldspar, I'm here. The older astronaut barely had room to turn their helmet in surprise. No, what are you doing? I'm taking you home. Help me get you out of that chair. Push. Ponder braced themselves against the hull and heaved with all their might, trying to give him some room. Feldspar joined in, straining. It wouldn't budge. Then Ponder pulled on Feldspar instead, trying to pry him sideways out of the situation. Forget it. Get out of here while you can, they protested. Ponder looked back toward the hatch. The tip of a root broke through the glass and coiled into the interior. Atmosphere was leaking out. I can't. Is there another way out? There's one way. Your ship close? Feldspar was already thinking 2 steps ahead. Yeah, they started to say. Ponder searched their helmet visor for the indicator that showed the direction and distance of their own ship. Yikes, I must have put more thrust on it than I meant to. It's clear of the Bramble, but it's farther away than I thought. Feldspar watched them and must have guessed the approximate direction. They still had a death grip on the stick, and the maneuvering thrusters kicked on. They tried to spin the ship, but the uneven shape responded strangely. They fought with the controls. "There it is," Ponder pointed, as their ship passed across the cockpit. It looked like a little model ship at this range. "All right, we'll get it next time it comes around. Hang on tight." Ponder trusted him and grabbed a handhold in the back of the pilot's seat. "That's not going to be enough. Get yourself good and stuck." Ponder glanced back at the route that had entered the ship. It was headed straight for the reactor, homing in on the energy. It crushed pipes and wires as it grew. Red lights started blinking, and an alarm sounded. "I think it's going to blow," Ponder warned. Feldspar stayed focused. "We're not going to stick around and find out. Almost there. Get ready." They pulled the glass cover away from a red button. Ponder understood. They pulled on Feldspar's harness again, but this time they weren't trying to get him out. They squeezed their own arm under the straps, tangling them together on purpose. Ponder's ship crossed the glass again. Feldspar slammed the button. There was an explosive rush. Ponder was yanked forward and dragged by the arm like a rag doll. Suddenly they were surrounded by empty space, except for the canopy of the cockpit and the pilot seat they were anchored to. They looked back, getting one last glimpse. Feldspar's ship, still attached to the harness, was crushed and choked with vines. Sparks and arcs of electricity shot out as the reactor was breached. Feldspar was finally able to get some breathing room and unbuckle. The vine that had pinned him was left behind in the wreck. "I waited ages to use the emergency ejection." Ponder's ship started out as a tiny glint of metal. Are we really going to get all the way back to it? But sure enough, it got bigger and bigger. Once they were as close as they were going to get, they pushed off from the cockpit and jumped out into space. The jets on their suits carried them the rest of the way. The sunlight was hotter. Ouch. It hurt to look at the sun now, even through the visor. Are we too close to the sun already? They hurried through the hatch and to the controls. Feldspar barked, "Up and over!" Ponder understood and threw all the ship's thrust into a perpendicular course. Don't fight our momentum. Use it to break free of the gravity. Once they'd cleared the danger, they finally sat back and took their helmets off. "You know, that's the second time I've lost that ship," Feldspar mused. "Like you said, move fast or die unpleasantly." "I'm a little old to move fast," the veteran admitted. "I'd be toast if you didn't come get me. You could have just pulled out, let me go, and told them I died a hero." "You're good, kid." That meant a lot to Ponder. With everything that had happened, they'd almost forgot that being an expert pilot was their original goal. "I still can't believe you got us back to the ship. How did you line up the trajectory of that ejection? We were spinning and we had that giant seed pulling on us." The old coot smirked. "Well, some things just come natural when you're the best that ever was." As they were heading back, dark Bramble and Timberhearth were at a point in their orbits where both could be seen through the cockpit. The seed should be falling into the sun right about now. Dark Bramble flashed brightly for half a second. Instead of dim pale light, brilliant golden beams shone through the open gateways. Ponder's jaw dropped. "Did you see that?" "Felt that, didn't you stupid plant?" Feldspar growled. About 15 minutes later, a radio transmission came through from ground control. After Hornfels made sure they were all right, they had some news. The observatory's monitoring equipment was all active throughout the day's events, and the scientist was eager to share. "I don't believe it. The shadow got smaller. It's back to where it was before the incident." Printed charts and images shuffled on the desk. This is the first time in history it's gotten smaller instead of larger. I think we can actually beat it. Feldspar smirked. Hey, it shouldn't have messed with Outer Wilds Ventures. I don't think we could have done it without Chuck, Ponder remarked. Well, she's one of us. It counts. Be sure to tell her that. Let me check on her. Click. Hornfeld still had that scout set up overlooking where the dark bramble seed used to be. Click. Click, click. Hornfels? Ponder asked curiously. The scientist was silent, distracted by something. Click, 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 click. Ground control came back on the line, but they sounded serious this time. Feldspar, Ponder, you'd better get back to Youngbark Crater. Is Chuck all right? I don't know. It was easier to land in Youngbark Crater now that the bramble was gone. Maybe this will be a proper pine forest again. Thankfully, the vines left behind stopped moving and growing after they were cut off from the seed. The woodcutter crew was busy gathering all the pieces they could find to chop it up or burn it. Dead, apparently, but you can never be too careful. They could see Chuck as they touched down. She wasn't as big as before, but for some reason she wasn't back to regular person size. The two pilots took off their helmets and hurried to her side. She swelled up bigger, then tried to shrink again. Ponder could tell she wanted to look normal right now, but something stopped her. She let out a bark of pain and went big again. Feldspar reached up and put a hand on her face. What's the matter, girl? Did you swallow something? Show me. Chuck centered her anxious eyes on Feldspar and tried to calm down. She stopped struggling and remained large. She didn't want to, but there wasn't a choice. She opened her jaws for inspection. The two Harthians looked past her teeth into her cavernous mouth. Feldspar had brought their flashlight, and they shone it inside. That's not a sight I was prepared for. Best not to think about it. It was easy to see what didn't belong. A piece of wood was stuck to the inside of her cheek. No, it was embedded. Looks like she got a thorn stuck in her from one of those vines, Ponder observed. It's as big as my arm, in deep, too. The bramble just don't want to let go. This is bad. Feldspar went pale. I've seen this before. When an angler swallows a thorn, it sprouts a new seed. It grows. Kills them from the inside. Her breathing quickened. She heard him say that. She's scared, too. It's gonna be all right. We'll get it out quick, they reassured. Ponder, you know how to lasso? Ponder nodded. I'll get my rope. Let some line out of the winch and tie one end on the hook, Feldspar called after him. Dad stayed with Chuck. The short Harthian looked so tiny next to her, but they were her rock. Once again, Ponder hurried back into the ship to save the day. At least this time the solution is simple. Maybe this time they weren't on a ticking clock, but they rushed anyway. I don't want her to be in pain like that. Let out the line, get the rope, tie it off. Soon Ponder was back to Chuck, with enough slack on the rope to work with. Lasso the end of that thing. I'll pull it out when you got it. Feldspar handed off the flashlight and traded places back to the ship. All right, hold still, Ponder said. I'll just get this on there real quick. They swung the rope around in a circle and flung the lasso into her mouth. Both sides of the loop fell on the same side of the thorn, and it slid off. Hang on, just gotta... Ponder got ready again and focused on the base of the thorn. This time, the lasso went over it right. but part of it got stuck on a broken end of black wood at the top. It kind of tightened on it, but no, when Ponder pulled, it slipped off again. If it would just get around that one stubborn bit, it would hold on real good. They wound up again and through. They did everything right, but that jagged piece hanging off was making it impossible. Ponder huffed. Well, if that's how it's going to be, they muttered, holding the flashlight in their teeth. Without thinking twice, they grabbed the sharp tips of those fence post teeth and jumped over them. Chuck stiffened in alarm. Ponder, what are you doing? Did you just... Yes, you did. Why would you do that? She felt hands and boots climbing around her mouth. She flinched involuntarily as Ponder started tugging on the thorn. Oh my gosh, don't swallow, don't swallow. If that rope don't want to stay on its own, I'll make it stay. Ponder finally wrapped the rope around the thorn properly. They made a strong knot and yanked the end of the rope, making sure it was secured as tightly as possible. That'll do it. Pulling on the thorn by hand did no good. Feldspar was right to use the ship. Ponder looked around in the dark maw. It was hard to quite understand what they were looking at, but it was clear that everything around them was designed not to let anything out alive. Yikes! Is this her stomach too? Or is there more space inside her than I can see? They'd been so frustrated at the rope, they forgot to be afraid until now. I don't know much about her anatomy, but that's not how I want to find out. Ponder quickly scrambled for the exit. They climbed over her teeth again and gladly put their boots down on solid ground. They shook off the heebie-jeebies and made sure to stand clear of the rope. Feldspar ran out of patience waiting for the signal and started reeling in the winch. The line went taut and started to strain. Then something gave and there was slack on the line. A moment later, the winch cable pulled out the evil thorn onto the ground and dragged it across the dirt. Chuck made more pained noises, but she was able to shift her size again. Even after watching it happen a few times, it's still pretty mind-breaking. Soon she was standing in front of Ponder, her clothes a bit mushed and wrinkled, but other than that she looked fine. She rubbed her sore cheek. 2 monstrosities tried to kill her today, and she's got a cut on her lip and a sore cheek. Chuck looked at him, well, relieved surely, but still anxious about something. Thank you. I never thought anyone would trust me like that. That was dangerous, you know? Ponder gave a witty smile. Oh, you know me. We Harthians are pretty reckless. Blowing ourselves up, shooting ourselves into space, biting into things we know might kill us. She raised an eyebrow. She noticed that she was included in that description. She was looking, well, gosh, she looked deeply into Ponder's eyes. She moved closer and leaned in and almost jabbed Ponder in the face with her tusks. Sorry, she pulled back, embarrassed. What are you... She huffed at her frustrating biology and turned her cheek to him. I'm waiting. Well, I thought you might like me. That was dumb. Ponder took off their hats so they could sneak in under the brim of hers. They gave her a tender kiss on the side of her face. I know she paints some blush on there, but stars above, it really looks like she's blushing now. I wonder if she can do that. Ponder held her weird tentacle hand and said, Of course I like you. You're a real catch. She relaxed into a happy smile. That's the most reckless thing you've done. They both thought of all the near misses in the past few days. Maybe she's right. Don't care. They both started to laugh. Most reckless thing so far, Ponder quipped and squeezed her hand. Feldspar came walking up beside him. You seem to be doing all right, they said, looking up at her fondly. She nodded and chuckled. What's so funny? Did I miss a good joke? Chuck picked Feldspar up like a kid and hugged him tight. Whoa, hey! Love you too, Dad said. She turned and gave Ponder the brightest, happiest grin ever. She's free.